Hi, Virgo. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you are doing really, really well. This reading is for any sun, moon, or rising Virgo sign. We'll take a look at the cards. We'll get a sense of the awareness for the week, guidance, and possible outcomes. I will I will also choose a couple of oracle cards for additional information. Okay, let's get started, Virgo. Someone who typically operates from position of control and self-protection has completely dissolved around you, and that dissolution isn't weakness. It's the most vulnerable thing they've ever allowed themselves to experience. Their ego, the protective shell they use to navigate worlds safely and maintain power in their interactions, has melted in your presence in ways they didn't plan and can't reverse. And now they're attached, dependent, unable to generate the same feelings with anyone else. This is someone who doesn't typically allow themselves to need anyone, who prides themselves on independence, on being the pursued rather than the pursuer, on maintaining emotional upper hand in relationships, who's always had options, always had control, always had ability to walk away without looking back. But with you, all of that shifted. You did something, maybe intentionally, maybe just by being yourself, that penetrated defenses they've spent years constructing. Let me describe what melted ego actually looks like in someone who's usually armored. It looks like them softening around you in ways they don't around others. Their body language changes less rigid, more open. Their voice changes less performative, more genuine. Their entire energy shifts from defended to accessible. You're seeing version of them that most people never see, the person underneath the persona, the vulnerability beneath the confidence, the human beneath the image they project. Or it looks like them seeking your approval, specifically when they don't typically need anyone's approval. They want to know what you think. They adjust behavior based on your responses. They're measuring their worth through your eyes instead of through their own carefully maintained self assessment. That's ego melting when someone who's usually self referential becomes other referential, specifically referential to you. Or it looks like them losing their cool, their control, their careful management of how they present themselves. They say things they didn't plan to say. They react emotionally when they usually stay composed. They make choices driven by feelings rather than strategy. They're operating from heart instead of from head, from desire instead of from calculation. And that shift is evidence of ego dissolving under heat of whatever you generate in them. Some people go through entire lives maintaining perfect control of their image and their emotional expression. They're never vulnerable, never needy, never caught off guard by their own feelings. But you've cracked that control, and now they're experiencing something they've successfully avoided for years: attachment to someone they can't manipulate or manage or keep at safe distance. Let's pause here. This reflection invites you to consider whose carefully maintained composure seems to fall apart specifically when they're around you. Maybe someone who's usually smooth, charming, in control of every interaction, but with you, they stumble over words, forget what they were saying, act almost nervous in ways that don't match their usual confidence. That nervousness is their system recognizing that you matter more than other people matter, and mattering creates stakes that composure can't navigate. Or someone who's usually emotionally distant but who becomes almost clingy with you. Who wants more time, more contact, more reassurance than their independent personality would typically require? Who seems to need connection with you in ways that surprise both of you? That clinginess is attachment forming in someone who's worked hard to avoid attachment their entire life. Or someone who's usually the center of attention, the person everyone wants, but who becomes focused on you in ways that ignore everyone else. They're not working the room anymore. They're not performing for audience. They're just fixated on you and your responses and whether you're giving them what they desperately need, even though they'd never use the word desperate about themselves. That singularity of focus is ego death when person who usually disperses attention across many sources concentrates it all on one source because that source is only one that satisfies. This reflection invites you to consider, what do you offer that might penetrate defenses that usually keep everyone else at distance? There's something specific about only you can satisfy them that reveals dependency that's both flattering and potentially concerning, depending on health of attachment. Healthy attachment looks like you meet needs they have that others don't meet, and they're still whole functional people when you're not around. They prefer you, they're happiest with you, but they can survive without you. Unhealthy attachment looks like you've become their entire source of validation, worth, emotional regulation. They can't function properly when you're absent. They're obsessive. They've made you responsible for their emotional state in ways that create pressure you didn't ask for. The difference is autonomy. Do they choose you from place of wholeness or need you from place of emptiness? What you're receiving, this melted ego, this attachment, could be either depending on the person and the dynamics between you. If this is person who's generally healthy but who's just never felt what you make them feel, the attachment might be beautiful, might be them finally experiencing connection at depth they didn't know existed, might be them discovering that vulnerability isn't weakness when it's with right person. But if this is person who's unhealthy beneath confident exterior, who's using you to fill void or escape pain or avoid dealing with their actual issues, the attachment might be trap for both of you. This reflection invites you to consider, does this person's attachment to you feel like choice or like need? Let me describe what different forms of satisfaction might look like, because only you can satisfy them could mean several things depending on what they're actually seeking. Maybe what only you satisfy is their need for depth. They're used to surface connections, fun, attractive, entertaining, but emotionally shallow. Everyone else skims surface, but you dive. You ask questions others don't ask. You listen in ways others don't listen. You care about understanding them instead of just enjoying them. And once they've experienced being truly known, surface connection becomes unbearable. They can have it with anyone. But it doesn't satisfy anymore because they've tasted depth and anything less feels empty. Or maybe what only you satisfy is their need for challenge. They're used to people being impressed by them, agreeing with them, following their lead. But you push back. You disagree, you make them work for your approval, and that challenge activates them in ways compliance never did. You're not easy conquest, you're worthy opponent. And competing with you mentally or emotionally or even physically creates satisfaction that easy victories can't match. Or maybe what only you satisfy is their need for acceptance. Beneath the ego and the performance and the carefully curated image is person who's deeply insecure about being lovable as they actually are, rather than as they present themselves. And you somehow see through performance to actual person and you like actual person. You're not impressed by their achievements or status or appearance. You're drawn to their humanity. And that acceptance of their real self creates safety they've never felt before. Or maybe what only you satisfy is physical or sexual in ways they can't explain or replicate, chemistry they've never experienced. Physical responses their body only produces with you. Satisfaction that's complete in ways other encounters, even good ones, never achieve. Bodies don't lie. And if their body responds to you differently than it responds to anyone else, that's information their conscious mind can't override or rationalize away. This reflection invites you to consider, what need do you meet for this person that others can't seem to fill? There's something about what happens when someone's ego melts and attachment forms that's worth examining, because this creates power dynamic whether you want it or not. When someone who's usually in control becomes vulnerable, when someone who usually has upper hand becomes dependent, power shifts. You now have ability to hurt them in ways others can't, to reject them in ways that would devastate where rejection from others would just mildly disappoint, to withdraw attention and watch them scramble to regain it. That power is intoxicating if you're someone who's felt powerless in other relationships. If you've been the one chasing, the one more invested, the one whose ego got melted by someone who didn't reciprocate. But power over someone who's vulnerable to you carries responsibility. How you use that power reveals your character. You can use it generously appreciating their vulnerability without exploiting it, reciprocating their attachment if you feel it, being gentle with the trust they're placing in you. Or you can use it cruelly enjoying their desperation without reciprocating, keeping them attached while maintaining your own distance, using their need for you to extract favors or attention or validation you want. Or you can use it manipulatively, recognizing their attachment gives you leverage and using that leverage to control their behavior, decisions, or resources. How you respond to someone's melted ego and resulting attachment is character test, and you're being tested right now. This reflection invites you to consider, if someone gave you complete power over their emotional state, would you use that power responsibly? Let me address what you should do with this situation, because recognizing someone's attachment to you is just first step. Deciding what to do with that recognition is where actual choice matters. If you reciprocate the attachment, if they melted your ego too, if satisfaction is mutual, then this dynamic becomes foundation for deep connection. But even mutual intensity needs boundaries, needs both people maintaining enough autonomy that connection is choice rather than compulsion. Make sure you're both still whole people who choose each other repeatedly rather than broken people who need each other to function. Make sure the attachment enhances life rather than replacing life. If you don't reciprocate, if their attachment is one sided, you need to communicate that clearly, not cruelly, but unambiguously. I care about you, but I don't feel the same intensity you feel is honest. Let's see where things go when you already know things aren't going where they hope is cruel, because it maintains their attachment while protecting your options. And if their attachment feels unhealthy, obsessive, possessive, desperate in ways that concern you, you need to create distance even if that distance hurts them. You're not responsible for managing someone else's emotional regulation. If they can't be okay without constant access to you, that's their work to do, not yours to accommodate. You can care about someone deeply and still recognize that their attachment to you is unhealthy and that maintaining connection would enable dysfunction rather than support growth. This reflection invites you to consider, does this person's attachment to you feel healthy and mutual, or does it feel like a burden you're carrying? There's something about what happens when initial ego melting intensity either stabilizes into sustainable connection or burns out from unsustainability. If it stabilizes, the melted ego becomes integrated vulnerability. They don't return to full armor, but they also don't stay completely defenseless. They learn to be vulnerable with you while maintaining enough self protection to function in a world that requires some armor. And you become safe person, the one they can be real with while still maintaining necessary performance elsewhere. That's healthy outcome. Vulnerability with you, appropriate boundaries elsewhere, attachment that's deep but not consuming. If it burns out, it's usually because intensity was unsustainable. Because what felt like profound connection was actually just mutual projection or chemistry without compatibility or escape from other problems rather than genuine relationship. And when it burns out, it often burns out hard because when ego melts and attachment forms and then attachment fails, the person often rebuilds armor even stronger than before. They learn vulnerability led to pain, so never be vulnerable again. Attachment created dependency, so never attach again. Opening up was mistake, so stay closed forever. That's tragic outcome. But it happens when intensity isn't matched by actual compatibility or when one person can't handle the vulnerability they're experiencing. You remain in complete control of how you handle someone whose ego has melted around you. You can honor it or exploit it, reciprocate it or decline it, nurture it into healthy connection, or set boundaries that protect you both. The power is yours. It always has been. You may notice reading this has made you think of someone specific, someone who seems different around you than they are with others, someone whose usual confidence dissolves in your presence, someone who seems almost desperate for your attention in ways their personality wouldn't predict. Whatever you're feeling, honor it. Take what resonates, softly release the rest. Trust yourself. Before we close, I want to ask you something. Has anyone ever become attached to you in ways that felt bigger than what the relationship actually was? How did you handle that? Drop your experience in the comments. And this, if you melted someone's ego and they became deeply attached, would that feel like gift or like